Look closely. Most people live inside invisible loops. They call them habits, destiny, even punishment. But the truth is simpler and darker. The loop only exists because your signal keeps sustaining it. What happens when you finally withdraw the energy? What happens when you stop feeding it? By the end of this video, you'll know. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Those words by Jung are not just psychology, they are a precise description of how the quantum field responds to you every moment. Because what you call unconscious is nothing more than the signal you keep broadcasting without awareness. And what you call fate is nothing more than the mirror reflecting that signal back again and again. Look at your own life. How many times has the same pattern returned to you, dressed in different faces, different places, different circumstances? A relationship that feels new, but ends in the same heartbreak. A job that looks like an opportunity, but repeats the same frustrations. A decision you swore you wouldn't repeat, only to find yourself trapped in the exact same outcome. These are not accidents. They are not punishments. They are loops, and they survive because you keep feeding them. The field is not malicious. It is precise. It mirrors exactly what you sustain, not what you say you want. And most people never notice the hidden truth. Every thought of fear, every habit of tension, every unconscious belief is a form of nourishment. Each moment of focus acts like fuel poured into the loop, keeping it alive, keeping it spinning. The loop does not need effort to sustain itself. It needs your attention, and the field, flawless in its reflection, continues to return the signal you have not withdrawn. Imagine reality as a vast quantum software, infinite lines of code running in parallel. Each possibility, each outcome, each identity already exists as potential in the field. But what runs in your life is determined by the code you keep executing. And the unconscious is nothing more than code on repeat. Background programs that keep calling the same function, producing the same result. You don't notice it because it feels automatic. But the field notices it. The field never misses a signal. Think of it as a loop track on a record player. The needle keeps circling, repeating the same notes. Most people try to scratch the surface with new affirmations, with rituals, with forced positivity, hoping the song will change. But the song doesn't change until you lift the needle, until you stop feeding the groove, until you stop energizing the repetition. This is why your reality feels scripted. Why you meet the same challenges no matter how much you try to run. Why opportunities collapse just when they feel close. It is not because you are cursed. It is not because you are unworthy. It is because you are broadcasting the same unconscious signal, and the quantum field, perfect in its coherence, is returning the exact same song. Again and again, and here is the brutal clarity. Most people call this fate. They call it destiny. They believe they are trapped in something bigger than themselves. But the only prison is the loop they refuse to see, the unconscious program they continue to nourish. The truth is not that you are powerless. The truth is that you are powerful enough to sustain the loop with your focus. And if you are powerful enough to feed it, you are powerful enough to starve it. But before we go deeper into how to break it, you must see the real cost of feeding the loop. Every time you give energy to the same fear, the same story, the same reaction, you collapse the same timeline. You delay the infinite possibilities the field is holding for you. You entangle yourself with the same version of reality when infinite others are waiting to be chosen. This is why repetition feels so heavy, why patterns feel so suffocating. Because with each cycle, you are collapsing the same outcome, solidifying it further into your identity. And the more you identify with the loop, this is just who I am, this is just how life works, the more you program the field to deliver it. The loop feeds on your agreement. And without that agreement, it cannot survive. So pause for a moment and look back. Which loops are you still feeding? Which repeated scenes are running in your life right now? Which unconscious signals are you energizing with your focus, your emotions, your breath? Because the moment you see them clearly, the moment you bring the unconscious into the light, the loop begins to weaken. Awareness is the first fracture in the cycle, and here is the transition into what comes next. If awareness reveals the loop, then understanding how it operates inside the quantum field is the next step. Because until you understand the mechanics of the loop, you will keep calling it destiny. And once you see how it works, you will understand why almost no one escapes, and why the moment you stop feeding it, everything changes. So if the loop keeps repeating, and if awareness is the first fracture, then the next question is obvious. How does the loop even exist inside the quantum field? Because if reality is infinite potential, why do we keep meeting the same scenes again and again? The answer lies in coherence, or rather, the lack of it. The quantum field is infinite possibility. Every outcome you could imagine already exists there, vibrating as probability. Abundance and scarcity, freedom and captivity, love and loneliness, they are all waiting as uncollapsed waves. But the moment you give your attention, your focus, your emotion, you collapse one of those waves into form. The act of observing is the act of choosing. The observer effect is not just physics. It is the architecture of your life. Now imagine that every time you collapse a wave, you reinforce a groove in the field. Like drawing the same pattern in sand over and over, the line deepens. Your nervous system memorizes it. Your subconscious reinforces it. Your body begins to expect it. And without even noticing, you begin to look for it, feel for it, call it into existence. The loop is nothing more than the repetition of the same collapse, the same groove, the same frequency, until it becomes identity. Think of it like an echo chamber. You send out a signal, the field reflects it back, and you respond with the same signal again. The sound bounces, repeating endlessly, until it feels like there is no outside world. But the truth is, the outside world is there. You just can't hear it because you're trapped in your own echo. That's the loop. It's not that other timelines don't exist. It's that you've become entangled with one vibration. And the field keeps amplifying it because you keep sustaining it. And here's the precision most people never realize. The loop doesn't only feed on conscious thoughts. In fact, the conscious mind plays the smallest part. The true signal comes from deeper layers. Your subconscious programs, your emotional states, the electromagnetic field of your heart. Science shows us that the heart's field extends several feet beyond your body, and it is constantly interacting with the larger quantum field. When your heart and mind are incoherent, the broadcast is fragmented, noisy, and the field mirrors back chaos. But when they are aligned, the signal is strong, clean, undeniable. This is why trying to think your way out of a loop almost never works. You can repeat affirmations all day, but if your body is still braced in fear, if your nervous system is still rehearsing scarcity, if your heart is still armored against pain, the field will mirror the deeper frequency, not the words but the energy beneath them. Forcing the loop to end only feeds it more, because effort is still energy, and energy is still food, and so the loop survives. Because instead of starving it, you fuel it with more noise. Instead of lifting the needle off the record, you press it down harder, scratching the same track into deeper grooves. And the field, flawless in its reflection, plays the song back to you without fail. This is the science and the tragedy of loops. They are not supernatural punishments. They are not cosmic mistakes. They are the inevitable outcome of a signal that is never interrupted. And the quantum field, with its infinite intelligence, keeps mirroring the program you have refused to rewrite. But now we arrive at the turning point. Because once you understand how the loop exists, you are faced with the only question that matters. Why do you keep feeding it? And that is where the greatest error begins. The error that keeps almost everyone trapped in the same cycles for life. So, now you see how the loop is formed. The field mirrors the signal, the repetition deepens the groove, and the unconscious keeps collapsing the same timeline over and over. But here is the devastating truth. The loop does not survive on its own. It survives because you feed it. And the way you feed it is the very error that keeps almost everyone trapped. The error is not laziness. It is not lack of desire. It is not even ignorance. The error is that people mistake force for freedom. They think the way out of the loop is to push harder, try stronger, add more effort, more rituals, more affirmations. They think the louder they shout at the mirror, the faster it will change. But the mirror has never responded to words. It only reflects the expression you embody. This is why so many people exhaust themselves in the name of transformation. They chant affirmations while their bodies shake with doubt. They visualize futures they don't actually believe in. They write lists of goals while secretly expecting disappointment. And with every act of forced effort, they send more noise into the field. Noise that strengthens the very loop they are trying to escape. Think about it. How many times have you decided to finally break the cycle, only to find yourself back in it within weeks or months? Did you really break free, or did you just add more energy to the same unconscious program? Did you lift the needle off the record, or did you press it down harder into the groove? The error is subtle because it feels like progress. You believe you are doing the work. You feel busy, committed, disciplined. But in truth, you are only feeding the loop under a new disguise. The effort becomes the fuel, and the loop, precise as ever, keeps spinning. This is why desperation is the greatest food for repetition. When you wake up every morning scanning for what's missing, you energize lack. When you obsess over your bank account while affirming abundance, you energize scarcity. When you check for symptoms while declaring health, you energize sickness. Every act of control becomes nourishment for the loop. The field is not listening to your words. It is listening to your fear, and here is the cruel irony. The more you grip, the stronger the loop becomes. Because gripping is incoherence. You say one thing while vibrating another. You declare love while bracing for rejection. You declare freedom while moving through life in chains of anxiety. The field cannot be tricked. It reads the dominant frequency, not the conscious mask. And so, the loop survives, not because you cannot escape, but because you keep feeding it. Now, pause and let this sink in. Your loops are not accidents. They are not punishments. They are evidence of where you keep surrendering energy to the unconscious. Every repeated cycle is proof of the signal you refuse to withdraw. That is the hidden exam, and failing it has nothing to do with intelligence or strength. It has everything to do with this single error, mistaking more effort for alignment. The error grows deeper because society itself glorifies it. We are trained to believe that struggle equals worth, that working harder equals deserving more, that pain is the currency of transformation. So we force, we grind, we grip, and all the while, the loop feeds on the very energy we think is setting us free. The cultural programming becomes quantum programming, and generation after generation repeats the same cycles, mistaking control for freedom. Ask yourself honestly, how many times have you declared a new life, a new chapter, only to find yourself in the same old reality months later? Did you actually shift the frequency, or did you just decorate the loop with new colors? How many times have you mistaken the exhaustion of effort for progress, when in truth, you were strengthening the very prison you longed to leave? This is the tragedy. The harder you try, the deeper you sink. The more you feed the loop, the hungrier it becomes. The more you grip, the tighter the chains feel. And yet the solution has never been in gripping harder. It has always been in releasing the grip. Because here is the paradox. The loop is powerless without your energy. It cannot spin without your attention. It cannot feed without your focus. It cannot survive without your agreement. And the moment you withdraw your energy, the moment you stop feeding the loop, it collapses. But almost no one discovers this, because starving the loop feels unnatural. Letting go feels like losing control. Simplicity feels like weakness. And so they repeat the error again and again, convinced that struggle is the way out, never realizing that struggle is the food that keeps them trapped. This is why so few escape. Not because freedom is rare, but because simplicity is intolerable to the conditioned mind. The field has always been waiting for one thing, a coherent signal. Not more words, not more effort, not more rituals, just coherence. And coherence only arises when the loop is no longer fed. And if the error has always been mistaking force for freedom, then the next realization is unavoidable. The way out of the loop cannot be through effort. It cannot be through pushing harder, or layering more rituals, or fighting more fiercely. The way out is through something far more radical and far more simple. You stop feeding it, At first, this feels impossible. The mind resists the simplicity. It wants formulas, steps, strategies, battles to win. But the quantum field has never cared about complexity. It only mirrors signal, and the loop cannot survive without your energy. The moment you withdraw it, the loop begins to collapse. So how do you stop feeding the loop? Not by running from it. Not by pretending it isn't there. Not by drowning it in more affirmations. You stop feeding it by recognizing it, and then refusing to energize it. This is not suppression. It is redirection. It is coherence. Step 1 is awareness. The unconscious becomes powerless when it is made conscious. Every repeated cycle in your life is not punishment. It is feedback. When the same relationship ends the same way, when the same financial ceiling snaps back, when the same anxiety greets you each morning, the field is not mocking you. It is diagnosing you. It is showing you the exact frequency you are sustaining. Awareness turns the loop from an invisible prison into a visible mirror. And when you see the mirror, you no longer confuse reflection with fate. Step 2 is interruption. When you catch yourself falling into the loop, the thoughts spiraling into fear, the body tightening into anxiety, the behavior repeating the old pattern, pause, breathe, interrupt the signal. This does not mean denying the fear or shaming the anxiety. It means refusing to let it run unchecked. Even one conscious breath can fracture the repetition. Even one moment of awareness breaks the cycle of unconscious feeding. Step 3 is redirection. The field does not listen to your words. It listens to your coherence. So after interrupting the loop, you redirect your energy into the frequency you choose. If you are looping in scarcity, practice gratitude, not as words, but as sensation. Feel the reality of having enough, even in small ways. If you are looping in fear, practice trust, not as blind optimism, but as openness in your body, a softening of the grip. If you are looping in loneliness, practice connection, not by chasing someone, but by embodying the state of being already worthy of love. Redirection is not pretending. It is tuning. Step 4 is coherence. This is where thoughts, emotions, and actions align into one signal. You cannot declare abundance while acting from fear. You cannot affirm health while punishing your body. You cannot visualize love while closing your heart. Coherence is when all levels hum the same note. The field hears one song, not static, and when it hears one song, it responds with precision. Step 5 is surrender. And this is the hardest, because surrender feels like losing control. But in truth, it is the highest form of alignment. The moment you stop gripping so tightly, the moment you stop scanning for proof, the moment you release the need to control the outcome, the loop has nothing left to feed on. The signal becomes clear, simple, unwavering, and the field mirrors it instantly. This is the method. Not 10 rituals, not endless affirmations, not constant checking. Just this: awareness, interruption, redirection, coherence, surrender. The loop does not collapse because you fought harder. It collapses because you stopped nourishing it. It collapses because you withdrew the very energy that kept it alive. And here is the truth most never discover: the loop is not strong. It is fragile. It has no power of its own. Its only strength is your agreement, your focus, your repetition. The moment you break the agreement, the moment you stop energizing it, the moment you let go of the static, the loop dies. And when the loop dies, the field is free to mirror something new. This is not theory. This is physics. The wave collapses where attention goes. Withdraw the attention, the wave dissolves. Shift the attention, a new wave crystallizes. This is the precision of the field, and it has never failed. So now the transition sharpens. If you understand the method, if you see how the loop collapses the moment you stop feeding it, then the next question becomes urgent. What happens when you actually stop? What reality emerges in the silence left behind? And this is where the tension rises. You already know the loop. You've lived inside it for years, maybe your entire life. You've seen the signs. You've felt the exhaustion, and yet, even after glimpsing the truth, how many times have you returned to it? How many times did you feel the weight of the cycle and still choose it again? Not because you wanted it, but because it was familiar. The loop thrives not on strength, but on repetition. It doesn't need to be powerful. It only needs you to forget. It waits for the moment when you are tired, distracted, vulnerable. It waits for you to tell yourself just one more time. And in that instant, you feed it again. Not because you are weak, but because the loop has learned to disguise itself as safety. It whispers, "Don't change, don't risk, don't step out." But here's the brutal truth. Comfort is the fuel of the loop. Every time you choose familiarity over possibility, you feed it. Every time you tell yourself you'll shift tomorrow, you feed it. Every time you rehearse the old story of who you are, you feed it, and the quantum field responds with merciless accuracy. It does not care about your excuses. It does not care about your intentions. It mirrors only your signal. If your signal is static, your reality will be static. If your signal is fear, your reality will echo fear. If your signal is scarcity, you will meet scarcity again and again. So ask yourself, how much longer will you feed the loop? Another year? Another decade? Until your entire life has been consumed by it. Pause and let that sink in. Because here is the reality, the loop has no power of its own, none. It is not the prison. You are the guard. You are the one turning the key, locking the door, pacing the same hallway. And every moment you remember this, every time you see it clearly, the lock begins to dissolve. But here is where the urgency sharpens. The loop is fragile, yes, but it is relentless. It will wait for you to forget. It will wait for you to slip back into autopilot. It will wait for you to go unconscious again. And the moment you do, it will reattach itself because it feeds only on your attention. That's all it needs, your focus, your energy, your agreement. So repetition becomes the weapon. The loop cannot survive without you. The loop cannot survive without you. The loop cannot survive without you. Burn these words into your memory. Carry them into every moment. Whisper them when you feel the old fear rise, when you notice the old thought returning, when you sense the familiar tightening of your body. Because in that recognition, you break the pattern. In that recognition, the loop starves, and then another question rises, heavier, sharper, unavoidable. What happens in the silence left behind once you stop feeding it? What timeline emerges when the static dissolves? Who do you become when the loop dies? Because this is not just about survival, this is about identity. You are not simply ending a cycle. You are stepping into a different frequency altogether. A coherence so strong, the field cannot ignore it. A clarity so sharp that probability bends in your favor. And this is where the danger lies. Not danger for you, but danger for the loop. Because coherence is lethal to the cycle. When your thoughts, emotions, and actions line up, the static dies instantly. The loop has nowhere to hide. So feel the urgency in this moment. Will you keep feeding it with your fear, your doubt, your delay? Or will you starve it by withdrawing everything it needs? The field is watching. The wave is waiting. The choice is yours. And if the loop truly cannot survive without you, then what happens when you finally stop feeding it? That question is no longer a thought experiment. It is the doorway. And once you stand before it, there is no way back. At first, the silence feels unnatural. You are so used to the noise of repetition that stillness seems threatening. When the old thoughts try to spiral and you do not give them energy, there is an emptiness. When the old emotions rise and you do not collapse into them, there is a gap. When the old behaviors call and you refuse to follow, there is a space. And in that space, the field listens. This is the moment of collapse. The wave that once carried fear dissolves. The probability that once repeated scarcity vanishes. The frequency that once bound you to loneliness weakens and dies. Because without your agreement, without your signal, there is nothing left to sustain them. But the collapse of the old is only half the story. Because the quantum field does not tolerate a vacuum. When one wave dissolves, another crystallizes. When one timeline dies, another is born. And what emerges is not random. It is the mirror of your new coherence. This is why the shift feels so radical. One day, nothing seems to move. The next, everything is different. You meet someone you never expected. An opportunity appears that you did not chase. A door opens that you never forced. The world bends, not because it suddenly became generous, but because you tuned into the frequency where generosity was already waiting. And here is the quantum truth. The field was always holding infinite versions of you. The broken one, the abundant one, the fearful one, the free one. They all existed as probability waves. You did not create the new self. You collapsed into it. You selected it by starving the loop that kept you elsewhere. So feel this deeply. Every time you withdraw energy from the cycle, every time you choose coherence over static, every time you embody the state you desire instead of chasing it, you are collapsing into a timeline where you are already free. But notice the subtle danger again. If you return to feeding the loop, the old reality can reappear. The collapse is not a one-time event. It is a living practice. Each breath, each thought, each choice is a vote for the frequency you are sustaining. Freedom is not a finish line. It is a signal you keep alive moment by moment. So let me ask you directly, who will you be in the silence that follows the loop's death? Will you panic and try to revive it? Or will you allow the stillness to shape you into the version of yourself the field has been holding all along? This is the climax, the breaking point, the transformation. Not dramatic, not loud, but seismic, because nothing outside of you needs to change first. The collapse happens inside, in the precision of your signal, in the coherence of your being. And when that inner collapse occurs, the outer world cannot resist. It must bend. It must mirror. It must align. This is not magic. This is not superstition. This is physics. The observer collapses the wave. And when the observer stops feeding the noise, the signal emerges with clarity. The loop dies and the future you always sensed, the one you thought was out of reach, becomes the only reality left standing. And so here we are, at the edge of the cycle, at the doorway where the loop dies, not because you destroyed it, but because you finally stopped feeding it. For so long, it felt like the loop was stronger than you, repeating endlessly, dragging you back into the same patterns, convincing you that nothing would ever change. But now you see clearly, the loop was never alive on its own. It was a parasite, drawing its power only from the energy you gave it, and the moment you stopped giving, the moment you chose silence over static, the moment you stopped rehearsing the same old stories, it collapsed. That collapse is not chaos. It is clarity. It is the precise language of the quantum field responding to your withdrawal of energy from one timeline and your alignment with another. But here is the most important realization. Collapse is not the end. Collapse is the beginning. When the loop dissolves, space opens. And the quantum field does not leave space empty. It rushes to mirror back a new form, a new frequency, a new self. This is the real reason why you were never trapped. The field was always waiting for you to choose differently, to withdraw from the cycle, and allow something greater to emerge. The silence left behind is not void. It is creation. It is the hum of possibility that has been drowned out by noise for years. And when you enter that silence, when you let the old identity die, when you stop clutching the bars of the prison that only you held in place, you realize you were never the prisoner. You were always the observer. You were always the frequency. You were always the field itself. So now the choice hangs heavy in front of you. Will you keep feeding the loop with your fear, your delay, your unconscious repetition? Or will you let it starve once and for all and step into the coherence that was always waiting? Take a breath, right here, right now. Feel the space between the inhale and the exhale. That silence is your proof. That gap is the field responding. It is not empty. It is listening. It is alive. It is waiting for your next signal. And if you feel it, if something in you has shifted even slightly, then know this. It is not an accident that you are here. This message found you because you were ready to hear it. Because your field is already changing. Because your future is already bending. Don't let this moment dissolve back into the loop. Anchor it, strengthen it, declare it. You can do that now in the simplest way. Subscribe, not to a channel, but to your own alignment. To stay in the space where the noise is stripped away and only the signal remains. And after this, continue. Watch the next video. Keep feeding the frequency of clarity instead of the static of repetition. Because each time you choose coherence, you collapse another wave. Each time you align, another timeline dies and a new one crystallizes. The loop only survives if you forget. So remember with every breath, every thought, every choice, You are not caught. You are not trapped. You are not weak. You are the signal. You are the observer. You are the quantum field shaping itself into form. And when you truly know this, when you embody this, the loop can never touch you again.